Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I've been planning to do a video on Montreal and talking about its transformation for a long time, but finally got to it. Here goes. So Montreal has a surprising ability to do something that I didn't think any city could do, and that's build less transit than Toronto. Now, Montreal has for years and years talked about building extensions of the Blue Line and the Orange Line, all kinds of new lines, and very little of it has happened. In fact, if you look at the past 20 years, the metro in Montreal hasn't really changed all that much. Some new stations have happened and services have improved, but Montreal's transit system is pretty stagnant, and in fact, it's not even as long as Vancouver's right now, which is pretty surprising to me. That said though, the REM project is going to be absolutely transformational for Montreal's transit system, and here's why. So currently, Montreal's metro system isn't even 70 kilometers long, putting it shorter than Toronto and Vancouver's transit systems. Montreal's metro's short length is not necessarily a negative. Montreal is a very dense city with a lot of walkable areas and pretty good regional transit compared to some other cities in the country. With all that though, Montreal's regional connectivity still lags behind Toronto's, and if Montreal really wants to be a strong competitor to Toronto, it needs to improve its regional accessibility. Now, of course, Toronto is doing this through Go RER, which is a project that basically transforms the existing commuter lines in Toronto, of which there are several, into high-speed, rapid, frequent transit lines. Now, the system that Go RER will be looks quite similar to systems in Europe as well as Sydney trains in Australia. But Montreal's taking a very different and very interesting approach to create a great regional transit system. Instead of trying to expand its AMT commuter network and use that in a similar way that Go is doing RER, Montreal is saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to build a brand new network called the REM. And the REM is somewhat an expansion of the existing AMT network. It converts the Deux-Montagnes line into a regional metro system, quite similar to the SkyTrain in Vancouver in terms of station spacing and service type. There are a lot of benefits to this service that I see over Toronto's Go RER. First of all, there's going to be way better frequency, the system is going to be more modern, that means metro-style trains, platform screen doors, Wi-Fi throughout from when it opens, among other great new features. It's also going to have great connectivity between itself and 3 of Montreal's metro lines, which is really awesome. Now, I think the approach of creating a new network is possibly way smarter than Go RER, and here's why. You see, in Montreal, a lot of the lines that AMT operates on just aren't as large in terms of infrastructure as many of Go's lines. And what Go is doing is essentially spending a ton of money to add double or triple or quad track throughout this giant commuter network it's built, which is incredibly expensive. Go RER is going to be probably, when it's complete, $30 or $40 billion, because not only does it include all of these double tracking projects and triple tracking projects, but it means a ton of grade separations, many of which have already happened, but which have been happening over the decades. It involves tons of station expansions, new trains, all kinds of major upgrades. And when you add up all those costs, many of which we've incurred already, you start to see that Go RER is just an incredibly expensive program. Now, by comparison, the REM program is going to cost only $6 billion, which, yes, only $6 billion is kind of an insane thing to say, but $6 billion for the connectivity Montreal is getting is kind of incredible. The network in Montreal is going to more than double when REM opens, and it's going to connect to far more destinations across the island of Montreal, as well as the South and North Shore. And the great thing about REM is that since it's less infrastructure intense than something like Go RER, is that we'll probably see way more extensions of it happening in the future. Remember that Quebec is not that much smaller than Ontario. Quebec still spends a lot of money on transit every year, and if you can imagine the amount of money that we in Ontario are spending on Go expansion, imagine what that could get you in terms of a lighter system, like a SkyTrain style system, where everything is built on a guideway, and so it's quick to build, it's inexpensive, and you can just build everywhere really quickly. I really expect to see REM explode in growth after its initial phase, perhaps with a second downtown tunnel, a ton of branches, making it very similar to the RER system in Paris, which I'm sure Montreal would like to emulate. Now, the other great thing about REM is it finally kind of breaks the hold of the way rapid transit works right now in Montreal. Right now, Montreal rapid transit is all underground. It's very dense, meaning that the station spacings are not very long. The trains are gigantic. It's just an expensive system to expand. That's because, again, everything has to be underground, which means you can't build these inexpensive elevated and at grade lines that the REM is doing. And since trains are so long, you have to build really long tunnels and station boxes, and since it's underground, that means a lot of digging, which is very pricey. REM means that, well, perhaps now, instead of doing the pink line as a full metro line, we can see the pink line happen as more like a REM line, which would be a lot less expensive to build while still offering a ton of capacity. One of the biggest mistakes Toronto and Montreal have made in their transit network development compared to Vancouver is that we have super overbuilt our network. Now, sure, if you're going to have one line, you should build it to have tons of capacity, i.e. the Yonge line or the Orange line in Montreal. But what Vancouver realized is that instead of building these massive lines with 6-car trains, 200-meter platforms, if you just build kind of right-sized lines, you can just build another line when capacity is met. And this means that more people get access to transit, and 2 parallel lines, which both have trains half as long as one line with super long trains, is still going to offer you the same capacity. But what it means now is that people are going to have to walk less to their destinations, you're going to need to depend on buses less, and you just cover more people with rapid transit. And then finally, I really do want to come back to the amenities of the REM. Now, currently, every North American transit system is pretty old-fashioned compared to the newest systems in Europe and Asia, and that includes our legacy systems. You see, when we extend something like the TTC subway or the Montreal Metro, we don't use the newest technology. Though we often talk about things like platform screen doors and Wi-Fi and advanced signaling, these things often go to the wayside because they're easy to cut and it makes the project cheaper. The beautiful thing about REM is that from day one, it's going to have every feature that a modern metro line built in China or France or Australia would have from the beginning. And that's going to mean platform screen doors, loading indicators, LCD displays, something which many people know I really like, as well as other awesome amenities. These are going to kind of up the standard of transit in Canada, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see other lines, such as in Vancouver, the SkyTrain network, as well as the Metro in Montreal and the TTC subway, try to start adopting a lot of those features because, whoa, Montreal did it. I guess now we're all allowed to have nice features that they've had in Europe for 2 decades. So that's my thoughts on Montreal's transit renaissance and the REM. It's a fantastic project, and though there has been some controversy, I think we're gonna be very happy in the future that we ended up going ahead with this project. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're not already, consider supporting us on Patreon, following us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribing. Have a good night.